Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again to one of our Road to Change live stream events. We've got a really good guest tonight, Paul BOGGIE. I'm really excited to have a good old chinwag with him. For those of you who have seen this before, you'll be familiar. It's whether you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook, comment, if you've got any questions for Paul or myself, just put them in the comment section on YouTube or in the comment section on Facebook, or you can also get us on Twitter at StreetCones, and you can also use the hashtag Road to Change. So for those of you that haven't seen this, they are an extension of our Road to Change workshops that we're running, with local authorities all over Scotland, working with people on community payback orders, and we do creative workshops with them. And we start with blank pages and we work on scripts, and we have these guests, some of the guests that we work with come into these workshops from time to time, people who have had their own road to change. And the scripts usually reflect that too. So they tend to be about people who are on a journey, like all of us are on a journey. And these Road to Change live streams are one-to-one chats that will touch on topics some people might find challenging, hopefully not distressing, but it may be. We'll talk about mental health, we're talking about addiction. Sometimes we broach the subject of suicide. We talk about criminal justice, and we talk about upbeat things, family, life, and our own road to change journeys and lived experiences. So as a wee disclaimer, we're not experts. We are only talking about our lived experience. So if anything comes up that's a trigger issue for people, we do highly recommend getting in touch with the Samaritans or the Tom Allen Centre or Crossreach or one of these organisations. But we will do our best to be responsible and just talk about our very own lived experience and what's worked for us. But also, like the Road to Change workshops, they're fun. They're a bit of a laugh. So we have some creative kind of daft questions. We always start with a riddle that we'll try and solve, and you guys can try and solve, and at the end of the chat I will see, hopefully in the comments, that one of you have figured it out. So last week, or the last Road to Change, we had the one about Misha and Marjorie being born in the same hospital at the same time to the same mum and dad, but not being twins, and how was that possible? And some of you did answer it. It was because they were triplets. So this one today is: what comes once in a minute, twice in a moment, but never in 1,000 years? What comes once in a minute, twice in a moment, but never in 1,000 years? So let that one percolate away in the background in the grey matter, and we'll come to it at the end and see. I'll see what Paul thinks of that as well. So listen, without any further ado, let me introduce Paul BOGGIE, who's the author of the book From Heroin to Hero. Paul, how you doing?
Hello, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I've been longing to have you on. We spoke a good few months back when we had our first chat, and I really wanted to. I kind of felt like you were kind of a star guest, if you like. So I wanted to kind of save you until later down the line, because I think your journey is a particularly unique one. It's a very special one. I'm really excited to start, getting into some of the nitty gritty with you. But some fun stuff to start. If you had a superpower, Paul, what would it be?
Well, I have gave that some thought. Sometimes I always thought it would like be the power of flight, even though I'm scared of heights. But actually, I think it's going to be invisibility. I often find myself daydreaming about being a fly on the wall. I'd love to be invisible, so definitely invisibility as far as superhero powers go.
Where are you going on your first day of invisibility? Where are you going?
Oh, there you go. I never thought about that one. That's a curveball.
Yeah, I always felt like I'd want to go into the MI5 building. I used to live in London. I used to cycle to work in Victoria, and I would cross. What bridge is that now? Forgotten. Westminster Bridge, yes. And you see that big MI5 building there, and I was like, God, I'd love to just walk around those corridors and see what's going on.
Just listening to things that we should obviously not be listening to.
Not be listening into, exactly. So some of the other daft questions we have, these are often just conversation starters. Favourite takeaway food?
Chinese.
Chinese.
Pretty simple, chicken curry kind of guy. I've tried a lot of the menu, and always resort back to chicken curry. I know it's plain and boring, but it's what I enjoy the most, you know.
Yeah, well, as for me, it's a curry. I was never I'm never a massive fan of the Chinese food. Although when I was a kid, I did used to love ribs. I used to love sticky ribs. I do remember that. I remember just getting covered in all the sauce, you know, the rib sauce. So listen, you're on a desert island. You can take with you one book, one film, and one person alive from history. They can be real or fictional. Who would you take onto that island?
So the film would definitely be Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
The item that I would take absolutely anywhere in life if I'm going anywhere would be a lighter. I know you can start fire with twigs and stones and sticks and all the rest of it, but it just makes life a lot easier if you've got a lighter. So, you know, definitely a lighter.
Okay.
I can't remember when I thought about who I would take. I think I would take Colin Lilly. I think that, and he is a Scottish musician.
Right.
He's a Scottish artist who I had no idea who he was a year ago. He was a finalist on Australia's The Voice, and he was in Boy George's team. And he's got an amazing voice, and he's such a funny guy. I've spoke to him on Zoom. He lives in Australia at the moment, so he's not going to be too far for the island that we're going to end up on.
He's good.
You know, he's not got far to go.
He'll be able to get there easily.
Yeah.
All right. So listen, tell us a wee bit about your journey. It's Leith is your home, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
sorry.
yeah, tell us a wee bit about your story.
Yeah. So I was born in Leith and I was brought up in Craigentinny, which isn't far from Leith. A good upbringing. My mum and dad had 4 boys. I was the second eldest. It was clear from an early age that we were going to be competitive, me and my brothers. And I suppose that sort of moulded my childhood a little bit. Competing all the time for attention. You know, like 4 boys, you can imagine 4 boys will be unruly at times, testing my mum's patience, especially. And I always sort of felt sometimes, like, this is going to sound harsh, but it felt unloved at times just because I was constantly sort of trying to get attention. And when it never came, I sort of, like, you know, I felt down. And if my brothers got attention and I never, then I always used to take that quite personal. There was a couple of instances that came up. One that definitely I'll never forget was play football as young kids and all across the world, I suppose. But we played football, and we're from a footballing family. My dad was an accomplished footballer, so we played football every day. We played for the school, primary schools and stuff. And my younger brother, there's 3 years between us, between the brothers. So I should be more accomplished than my little brother at football. All right? That should just be a given at that age, certainly when you're young. Well, it was clear to me I wasn't great at football, but I was okay. I could hold my own. I was getting picked for the team. And then I got subbed for my little brother one Saturday. He's 3 years younger. I was having a not so good a game. They took me off and put my little brother on. And then people came to the house to visit. I think it was called Ian St. John's football course, where you got to go away and they used to teach you all the football. It's like an academy.
Right.
And I heard my name mentioned in the living room because I was earwigging. I had my name mentioned, and my mum and dad both decided to choose my younger brother to go and send on it. But it was people in my age group that were, going, some of my friends were going, and my little brother got picked to go and do that football course, and he became a semi-professional footballer. So I often think, would that have happened to me? You know, if you'd set me on that course. But that's one of these things that...
Yeah, you remember these things. Yeah,
it's
defining moments.
Yeah, it's like, and I've spoke about it quite a lot over the last year, certainly, is that people have to understand that things that happen through our whole life, even back when we're young, they do define us. Like, as much as we don't want to think about things that scar us a little bit, or bad things or embarrassing things, you know, we try not to focus on those. Those things are who we are as human beings, you know. So, you know, things like that definitely did scar me a little bit.
And how is your relationship with your brothers now? Which one are you? Are you third?
Brother.
You're the second.
Yeah.
So yeah,
the forgotten.
The forgotten. I don't believe that for a second. But so what? How is that? How are those relationships now?
Yeah, so my relationships with my whole family are amazing. They've supported me through thick and thin, as you're about to hear. You know, they've always been there for me. At times, probably mostly they felt helpless, that there was no words, because they tried. There were no words that were ever going to be able to fix me. I was a lost cause. And that must have been very difficult for them to deal with. You know, it wasn't through lack of trying on their part. I just I didn't believe that I had the ability to change. So I continued doing what I was doing, which was obviously heroin and other drugs. So, you know, but they were there. They were always there. Even when my mum kicked me out, you know, and I was on the streets for a little bit, and I was sofa hopping and stuff because I wasn't welcome in the family home. I agreed. My mum was right to do that. I needed to kick up the backside because I was taking advantage in my mum's kind nature. I remember sitting in the living room and letting her see when I was going cold turkey. I remember sitting there because I had no money, and the quickest way for me to get money was going to be my mum. But I'd always been borrowing money from my mum for a long time. And then she started saying, "Look, I'm not giving you any more money, son. Like, I know where it's going and you're not getting it." And I was like, "Right, my mum, I promise I'll stop one last time." So I remember sitting, she was sitting watching Coronation Street, and she was fizzing because she loves Corrie. And I remember seeing it in her face, she was just wanting to watch Corrie. And I remember going and sitting in the chair, and I was twitching, and I was just like, "Please, mum, you just give me £20 and I promise that'll be the last time." You know, and she did give me money that night, and I did go away and buy heroin, and I never stopped.
Well, listen, just before, because I want to all of that stuff, which is, I suppose, is further down the line in the story. But can you tell us what your, you know, introduction to heroin and to drug use was? Do you feel like it was inevitable because of your environment or your background, your upbringing, that offending behavior and drug taking that it was inevitable? And do you feel like, and can you talk a wee bit about that introduction, the beginning of that journey?
Yes, as a young boy, I was in a gang. Excuse me. I was in a gang from an early age, primary school age. Drugs were always there. People were buzzing gas. People were sniffing glue. People were drinking. People were smoking cannabis. And I went through that whole part of my life not really participating. So I didn't believe that drugs were going to ever capture me in my life. I just had that belief. And I got taught from my parents, and I got taught at school that heroin kills. You know? And I knew people that died from using heroin. And people used to talk about it whenever the word heroin came up. Oh, so and so died, or you know, and so that was always my belief. And then at the age of 18, heroin flooded into Craigentiny. Literally, don't know where it came from, but it flooded into. There was a group, gang members that I hung around with. There was about 11 of us, and all 10 of my friends had started to take heroin. I was a boy racer. I used to go out round Princess Street and Carlton Hall, and I used to go drive everywhere. And I had the best car. I had a black Escort 1984 XR3. This thing was minted. So all my friends and that would always come to my house because they wanted to go in my car and not one of the other cars. And then they stopped coming to the house. I later found out it was because they were away using heroin. And so I was in the house on my own. I felt lonely. I hadn't argued with anyone, so I couldn't understand what was wrong. I ended up jumping in the car and went down to Portobello Promenade, where everyone was using heroin. I pulled up alongside them, and then that was when I got my first flash of tinfoil.
Wow.
Totally naive. I had no idea what it was. I'd never seen it before. I sat there. They ignored me. Kept sitting there, and then 10, 15 minutes later, one of my friends got out, jumped in the passenger seat, and then I said, "What's going on?" And then he was like, "They're chasing the dragon." And I says, "Chasing what? Like, what? Chasing the dragon?" And they're like, "Yeah, like heroin." And I was like, "No way." Like, these guys that I grew up with my whole life, like, they never had problems with drugs. Like, well, I never had problems with drugs. And then they're all sitting taking that drug. So it lasted for 2 weeks, Adam, where I didn't want to be on my own. So I said to them, "I'll take you to get the heroin in my car, and I'll let you smoke it in my car." So we done that for 2 weeks. Went away, you know, it was a routine every night, pick them up and go and get it. It smelt horrible. But anyway, you know, I had my friends with me and stuff, so it was okay. Then I had a massive argument with my mum one night. Can't remember what it was over, but I was really angry. I left. I remember shutting the stair door. I slammed the door that hard that the stair windows bellowed a wee bit, shaking. And I was just in a fit of rage. Jumped in the car, went down. I was still angry. And like every other night, "Paul, do you want some? Paul, do you want some?" You know, there's no danger. It's horrible. It smells. On that night, because I was angry, right, what do? So they explained to me what to do, you know, like with the flute, the tooter we call it, you know, to take the smoke and chase it. And so I done it. I felt sick instantly. I went green, you know, and I felt like I was physically going to vomit. Started sweating everywhere, like I've never sweated before in my life, just sweating everywhere. And it was horrible. I got out of the car, lay on the concrete, looked at the sky. Then I got up, went back in the car, and kept taking the drug. To this day, I'll never ever understand why I went back to continue for the next few months until I realised I was an addict. But certainly for those few months, I'll never know why I kept going back. Was it because I didn't want to be without my friends? I think so. I think that's what it was. I had a fear of being lonely and not having friends, which drew me to want to be with them. And they were all doing it. So it felt like I should be doing it or I'm going to get discarded from them. And that's just the way gang culture works sometimes. If you're not participating in what everybody else is, you can soon be disbanded and he's no part of the group now because he's not doing what we're doing. So I was aware of that. So I think that's probably what caused me to go at it, you know.
That fear is a powerful fear. And I remember reading that one of the you know, top fears that people list when they discuss that, you know, they're afraid of dying. They can be afraid of the dark. They can be afraid of, but one of the top fears is the fear of being ostracized or excommunicated, shut out. You know, it's such a powerful fear, and it still drives us. It drives a lot of us. Nobody wants that, you know. And I find it fascinating that your journey there that you've described, you know, grew up in a good family. There was issues like there is with any family, but it was fairly stable. You knew about drugs. You knew about the dangers of them. You didn't feel like, you know, it wasn't a surprise to you. You were shocked when you found your friends doing it. So there was nothing really that. And so that question I asked earlier about, do you think it was inevitable? It wasn't inevitable. Like, there was clear indicators in your life that taking heroin was just never going to happen, but yet it did. And that's, I suppose, that should be a red flag for anyone who's in a similar situation, or any young person who's grown up where drugs are available or accessible, to think that even though they might have the intellectual knowledge that they wouldn't want to take it, that they shouldn't take it, that it can still grab a hold of you, as it did in the car with your mates. And I suppose that's the insight that you've had, is that, yeah, it was, and it wasn't peer pressure. They weren't going, "Come on, Paul," you know, as it's sometimes portrayed, isn't it, in the media, like, "Oh yeah, somebody's pushing it on you." It was available to you, and you felt, I mean, it was your choice to take it. Is that fair?
I knew what I was doing, but I also had the belief that I would have the ability to stop when I chose. And that was obviously not to be the case, unfortunately. But I did have that sort of mindset back then. Well, you know, I could take it for once or twice, or a few weeks, or a few months potentially even. And when I've had enough, I will just stop, and that'll be it.
And that's the other interesting thing, isn't it? Like, you know, I remember taking the first sip of beer out of my dad's can of beer, McEwen's Export, when I was a kid, and it's like all of it, you know, smoking. No kid takes their first hull of a cigarette and goes, "God, that's good." Nobody takes their first sip of beer and goes, "Wow, God, that's really good." Nobody. Everyone is like, you know, and it sounds like your first experience with that heroin sounds awful. Like, you know, like, that's not selling it to me. "Hey, do you want to have this? It will make you sweat out of every sweat gland you have. You'll feel green. You'll feel like you want to vomit. I think I'll pass."
The smell, it smells like burnt fish, some rotten burnt fish. It's horrible.
You know? And yet, so you passed that moment, and then you went back immediately into the car, and you took another hit.
Yeah, and I continued to do it. I continued to do it for about a month or two, and I always remember the time where I was a source of transport for us. So I would take everybody up. Now, bearing in mind that my friends had started 2 weeks prior to me, I always remember going up and hearing that there'd been a drug bust, and all the heroin dealers had went underground because there was police cars everywhere. So we sat in a lay-by waiting when a text had come through to say, "Come and get some heroin." So we sat there for hours. I remember turning around and looking at my friends, and they looked ill. They were complaining of sore stomachs and cramps in their stomachs, and their eyes were watering. They just looked ill. Back then, I never really understood what was going on. I thought maybe they've ate something funny, or you know, I didn't understand what it was. I understand shortly after, we got the text, we went away, we got the heroin. Everybody took the heroin, and then that's when that's when it clicked. It was heroin that they needed to make them feel better, to take away the cramps and to take away all the physical pain that they have. That should have been the moment where another red flag had went off for me. Because at that moment, I wasn't in the same physical state as what they were. So by them suffering from what I now know is cold turkey. With him suffering with that, I should have been like, well, wait a minute, I've got 2 weeks grace here. Now it's time for me to just stop it, and I'm not going to have to suffer what they're suffering. And I didn't want to be a heroin addict. That's why would anybody choose to be want to be a heroin addict? So a red flag should have went off there, and it never. I kept continuing smoking heroin, and then shortly after there was another drug bust. I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks later. There was another drug bust, and I remember sitting, and it was my time to experience that horrible pain that they were suffering as well at that moment, because we were all in it together. But that was my first time to feel that horrible feeling. I realised at that moment I was in trouble. But it wasn't really until I took the heroin that night that I realised I had signed my own death warrant by how good that felt when I took the heroin. When I was that cold turkey and rattling and feeling horrible, and my eyes would just water, migraine, stomach cramps, shivering, horrible. And then to have that drug just wash over me and then just be like warm inside, and all these physical symptoms just disappear, and it's like, it's amazing. And I realised that night, like, I've done something awful here. Like, I just sort of, I think I gave up because my belief was that heroin kills, and I'd become a heroin addict, so heroin was going to kill me. So then I stopped. I started to stop sort of caring about my life, and I was working, and I worked full time, and I continued to work for 2 years as a heroin addict, and it was, I used to go into the toilets. I used to take heroin in my sock.
Jeez.
I used to go into the toilets, and I always remember the cleaning ladies coming in one morning. Bearing in mind, this stuff stinks like rotten fish. It's horrible smell. I remember sitting in the cubicle with my tinfoil, and I won't say the place that I worked because I didn't want to get anybody in trouble, but I was supposed to be delivering mail throughout this building. Then it was a huge building and I had loads of toilets everywhere. So every time I seen a toilet, I thought, 5-minute break, because I had it in my sock. So I'd go into the cubicle, I'd get the tinfoil, make sure they knew they're about quiet, and I'd sit and smoke it. And then I heard all the cleaning ladies coming in. Oh, Aggie, what's that smell? They were all moaning, what's that? So that's rotten, that smell. They'd never smelled it before. It wasn't like tobacco, where they'd be like, somebody's smoking a cigarette or somebody's smoking a joint. It's that unmistakable smell that's, when you smell it, you know what it is. So I don't know to this day if they ever realised what it was that I was doing in that cubicle. But I was crashing out. 45 minutes later, I'm coming to and thinking, oh, jeez, I might be doing this meal. So I always used to pass it off where I'm not feeling very well. I've been in the toilet and I've been sick. That's why my eyes are red, and that's why I didn't look very well and stuff. I often get sent home, but I kept that up for 2 years, which is remarkable, really, when you think about to be a heroin addict and be working full time for 2 years. But I was adamant that I was hiding it from my parents and my brothers and all my family and friends. They were not getting to find out. So the best chance I had was to keep a job, Then obviously, as things start to deteriorate physically and mentally, I suppose, it became harder and harder. My moods were up and down more. I was becoming more aggressive. I was becoming more tearful, and having that inability to hold it in, crying all the time, flying off the handle all the time. And then, so I left my job, and then I had to source money. I needed money. There was nothing else. I needed money because I needed heroin. So I got jobs delivering Chinese food and delivering Indians and stuff across Edinburgh. That helped fund it for a while. Then that went belly up. So all my friends smoked cannabis. They were all smoking cannabis. Pretty much everybody I knew back then, most of the people had all been all smoking cannabis. And they were sourcing it from other places. So somebody came up to me one day and says, Paul, I'm going to give you a 9-bar, which is a big bit, a big block of cannabis. He says, I'll give you that. I'll come back and see you in a week for the money. And I was like, right, all right. So I took it and I sold it to all my friends. I gave them bigger deals than they were getting elsewhere. So everybody was coming to me. All the money was coming into me. And then I was buying heroin with the money that I was making. And I was having cannabis to smoke. So I was living in a world where, you know, a lot of my friends were out robbing people at knife point. They were going up to the local supermarket and filling their pockets up with batteries and gammon steaks to sell for bags of heroin. They were just robbing and stealing anywhere they could. And I never wanted to be, I just could never, to be honest, Adam, I was no good at it. You've got guilty written all over your face. So you just stay outside. And, you know, and I was like, that's fine by me. See you later. So I ended up leaving. And I was glad of that because I was never a very good thief. You know, so I just used my selling skills, if you like, for cannabis. I'll give you more. I'll give you a little bit more. I'll give you chucky, which is where you borrow. You know, if somebody's not got money, you can give them it for free and then they can give you it next week. Obviously, in the world of drugs, many people never came back and paid me what they were owed. But that didn't matter. I was still making enough money to be able to fund my heroin habit, my Valium addiction, and have all the cannabis that I wanted and still be able to gas, electricity and food and other bits and pieces and stuff that I needed, tobacco and all the rest of it. So that was really how my life had become.
It sounds like a full-time job, you know, like to sustain a habit like that is the effort that it takes just sounds exhausting, you know. But I suppose once you're on that train or roller coaster, you getting off is ill-advised, or it certainly feels like it. You know, nobody wants to get off a moving roller coaster, and it feels like you're on one, and you're doing everything you can to stay on that track for fear of, I don't know, what was the fear, do you think? Like, I suppose the more, and were you always, did you always smoke it or did you inject as well?
No, so that was the thing. I've never injected it. I had one horrific experience with one of my friends who decided to inject it, and that put the fear in me. Thankfully, that put the fear in me. And, you know, so I always smoked it, but that was a conception as well. Growing up, when I was watching educational videos at school, there was always a spoon. There was always a needle. There was always a belt. So visually, as a kid growing up, that's heroin. That's heroin. Heroin is brown liquid, a spoon, a needle. So when I seen tinfoil, the alarm bells weren't going off as much as what they would have if I'd seen a spoon. If I'd seen a spoon, I probably would have ran for the hills. But because I only seen tinfoil, my curiosity was like, well, it's no really heroin. You can't get addicted to it this way. You know, sort of naive in my way of thinking that because I'm only smoking it, that you can't become addicted to it then. How wrong was that? You know? But anyway, you know, and that's yeah, thankfully I never went down that route, but it is that roller coaster for, you know, first thing when you open your eyes as an addict, certainly a heroin addict, because that's my experience, is you need money to source the drug. Nothing else matters until that moment in time. Your family didn't matter. Any grievances that you've got with anybody or who you owe money to or what's going to happen if you didn't pay the money, none of that matters when you open your eyes. When you can feel the cold turkey in the pipeline, you know it's coming, you know how horrible it's going to feel when it gets here, that fear overtakes everything and you will get money.
And how regular? I mean, how is it a 7-day-a-week thing? Is it? Can you go a couple of days without it? Do you? You know, how do you like? I think it's important. This is an important conversation for people who feel like they've got maybe a train spotting version of what this is, what a heroin habit entails. This is an important kind of conversation. So, is it is it a few times a day? Is it every second day? I mean, what?
So you need it every single day, and if you don't get it, then you will very quickly become ill. Heroin lasts, depending on how much you take. You know, it can last like for 8 hours or whatever. But if you're taking heroin first thing in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to make it to 8 o'clock tomorrow morning without feeling crap. So, you know, it's always a nighttime thing. You always want to take it at nighttime so that you can get a sleep, and then but you can get up the next day and it's just a cycle. Problem is, with being an addict, is you become greedy. You know, you take drugs when you don't need them. Physically, you know, a lot of times I took drugs, I would have a bag of heroin in the morning, and it'd be lunchtime. I had no need for a bag of heroin because I'd already had one in a few hours prior. But if somebody come along and wanted to buy some cannabis and handed me £40, I'd go away and I'd buy 2 bags of heroin. And I wouldn't sit the 2 bags of heroin and think, well, that's one for tomorrow and that's one for Wednesday, because I feel okay right now. I didn't need it. You know, it's there. So you're opening them up, and then before you know it, you've smoked 2 bags of heroin. And then the following day, you're kicking yourself thinking, oh, that's 3 bags of heroin I done yesterday and I only needed 1. You know, and you start getting angry and annoyed at yourself that you've done that, and then you need to go and start beg, borrow, steal for money. And it's just a constant ongoing battle that you've got.
Talk a bit about then how long this cycle lasted, and kind of take us up to the point where, you know, the horror really took hold of you and you were able to make this change. Because the way it sounds at the moment is certainly for me, I don't know how for other listeners, and I have, I mean, I don't have experience of heroin, but I have I went to a few centres. I did a play for the Traverse Theatre years ago called Among Unbroken Hearts, which was written by Henry Adam from Wick, who was a former heroin addict. And I knew nothing about it. So I went to some of the centres. I went to a centre in Muirhouse, and I sat with some recovering heroin addicts, and I was shown how to do it. And I had my own box and my kit, and I took it around with me. And because I had to prep heroin every night on stage, and I had to have an overdose every night on stage. And so I felt like I can't do this with any authenticity unless I'd felt like I want to go and speak to people. So I went to, and I had to really battle with myself because I've got a thing with needles. So like and I had my little Golden Virginia tin, you know, with the spoon and my little cotton buds and my little my syringe and a pretend bag of hair. I can't remember what we use now, but and I worked with it every night. So, you know, I would go home at night from rehearsal and I'd practice and practice and practice because I had a whole scene to do, and it had to be like it was by the end. It was like I could do it completely, you know, blindfolded. Because it was such a regular thing. And I remember at the start when I used to feel physically sick, like, and I knew it was just pretend, you know, I knew it wasn't real, but I would feel this sickness in the pit of my stomach that, you know, if I had to do that every night. And when we did the play, and it was we toured it, it went to London, it was the #1 Critics' Choice at the Fringe, at the Bush Theatre in London. But we had people pass out in the theatre and we had people leave, not because the play was bad. They loved the play, but there were some people that just couldn't handle that process. And so, you know, when you talk about this process and the fact that you were you know, chasing this feeling all the way up to that it was the dominant force, I suppose, like the first thought you have in the morning when you wake up and the last thought when you go to bed. It's like an all-consuming, I was going to say passion, but the passion seems like a completely wrong word to use, but a drive. So take us now through this journey up to when you either did you realize that you needed to stop, or did someone intervene, or how did it come to a head eventually?
So I became depressed and I was crying a lot. I went to see the doctors and stuff, and on my 21st birthday, I confessed to my big brother and turned my mum and dad and my whole family and the whole community that I was a heroin addict.
Is this just off your own back? You decided to do this, or?
Yeah. It was. I don't think it was pre-planned to tell my brother that night on my 21st birthday party. It was my big brother and my big cousin. We went outside and we were chatting, and my brother said, "There's something wrong. There's something wrong with you. What's wrong with you?" And I was like, I just started crying. And he went, "What is it? You could tell me anything." And I was like, "No." I went, "What do you mean, no?" He started starting to get quite angry with me. Like, he said, "What do you mean? What is wrong with you? You need to tell me," and all that. And I was like, "Well, you know, I'm a heroin addict." And it was like, I seen the fire in his eyes because he knew who had brought heroin to me. He knew my friend who was a ringleader, the gang that I was sort of thing with, and he knew who had. Nobody can force anybody to take drugs, but there's somebody that's sourcing it. There's somebody that's got the contacts to get it, and it starts in an area. Has to start somewhere. One person has to get it, and then two. So that was the way it worked, and he knew who that was, and they had just seen the fire. He was angry. He said his name, and I was like, you know, it was like he just wanted to go and beat the guy up. You know, the guy was ages with him, no ages with me, but he just wanted to go and beat the guy up, and it was like, you know, it's not anybody's fault. It's my fault, and then I'll stop it. And he was like, "Aye, you will stop it. You'll stop it right away." And I was like, "Right, I will." And that was it. That was sort of left. It says, "Right, it's your 21st. Right, there's people in there that love you. Let's go and enjoy the rest of the night." So the both of them put their arm around me and all that, and gave me a hug, and we went back and continued the night. Sort of forgot about it and stuff. No, forgot about it, but I wasn't telling anybody else that night. But I suppose in a way it felt good. So that's what sort of inspired me, I suppose, to tell my mum and dad, because it felt good just not having to hide and just I was just constantly hiding everything all the time, and sort of I was totally withdrawn from my whole family. I was starting to not look very well, and they had no idea like that it was heroin. They thought I was smoking cannabis, or you know that's what they thought. They didn't think it was heroin. But then I told them, and then depression had kicked in. I relapsed 13 times. 13 times I promised my mum and dad I will stop. I meant it from the bottom of my heart when I spoke to them. I can remember speaking to them on some of those occasions, and I meant it. "Mum, I promise I will stop. Just give me £20, just £20, and I promise I'll stop." I meant it. It was like I wasn't lying. And then there's an inability to be able to stop taking. I could only get 1 day in or 2 days in. And I think 3 days is probably the longest I ever got a cold turkey before I packed in. You know, it was my mindset. I know now, but I didn't know back then. It was my mind wasn't prepared, and it wasn't able to have this ability to not take it. So I'd started cutting my arms and stuff, and that's when I sort of realised that I was in trouble. I was thinking about suicide every day, and I was crying as I was thinking, like, and wallowing in my self-pity on the sofa every day. I remember doing that a lot, like a really, really lot. And I was always on my own, lived alone. I just remember just feeling really sorry for myself, and then I remember thinking I didn't want to be here anymore, but I would never do that. I remember having the thought, and then right at the back of that thought thinking I'll never ever do that. And then as the months went by, I started marking my arms. I wasn't marking my arms to hurt myself, it was a cry for help. I wanted people to see my arms were all marked because I cut them with a knife. I wanted people to see, and I wanted people to say, Paul, what's wrong? You need help. Or force me into getting me some kind of help or something. And I'd have a t-shirt on. The only time I'd wear a long sleeve was when I went to my mum and dad's. I'd always make sure I had a jumper on, not to let them see my arms. But when I used to go and see my friends and stuff, I always had a t-shirt on because I wanted them to see that I was struggling. And I just spent so much time alone in that flat listening to music. Like, and then I remember thinking, as the months went by, and constantly just fantasizing about suicide, fantasizing about no being here, no being in this pain anymore. What would that be like? You know, and I was so much in my own head, having a conversation in my own head with myself about certain things, and then something just clicked, and I decided that I wanted to die. And it was an instant thing. It was like, right, I'm not playing games anymore. Like, I knew I wasn't playing games. I wasn't just crying out for help. I was tired. Just so tired. I was tired of crying all the time. I was tired of the pity in people's eyes that I knew that loved me. And I could see was pity in their eyes. And I was just tired of it. And I was trying my heart out to stop taking this drug. And I couldn't stop. For the life of me, I couldn't stop. So I just became tired, and other family things and stuff, breakdowns and everything got on top of me. And then I was just, I'm gone now. I don't know how, when. I started planning it, and I thought, knowing my luck, you know, if I jump off a bridge, I'll probably break a leg, and I'll still be here. Or, you know, if I jump on a train track, the train will change track or something. I says, and I knew when drugs, isn't it? Of course it is. You know, self-talking, it's like drugs. Like, it's going to be drugs. Because, you know, getting angry at myself, even back when I realised it's drugs. So I was like, let's take an overdose. So then I planned it. I knew I had loads of antidepressants. I had a whole concoction of pills that the doctor had been giving me to try and help with my moods and stuff. So I popped hundreds of pills into a blue bowl and got a big pint glass of water, and I could probably take about a dozen pills in one gulp. So I reckoned about 6 handfuls and 6 gulps, and then I would go to sleep. And that's what that was how simplified I had it in my mind. And I remember sitting on the rug, crying, saying goodbye to my mum and dad and my auntie, my uncle, my brothers, my nieces and my nephew. I remember sitting thinking of them all and thinking, I'm going to, like, what, you know, just why did that, why has it happened for a start, you know, and just sort of just again in that walling and self-pity sort of type thing. And then I was ready to go, and it was weird because I shouldn't have smiled, I shouldn't have laughed, but I had a hi-fi and REM. I love REM, and Everybody Hurts come on. I put the CD Everybody Hurts on, and I was listening to all the songs, Drive and Man in the Moon and all these upbeat songs, and I loved them and stuff. And then the first few beats, Everybody Hurts started, and I was like, it's time now. It's time. It's a sad song, and it's very in keeping because it's a tearful. It used to make me cry when I was younger and stuff. So I always deemed it as a very sad song. So I picked that, you know, I heard that and I was like, right, it's time now. And I'm sitting there getting ready with the bowl between my legs, sitting listening to this song, filling the bowl up with tears from my eyes. And it's like Michael Stipe jumped out of that hi-fi that was playing. It was completely pitch black. I'd locked all the doors. The curtains were pulled. You know, nobody was going to find me. I was adamant about that. And it's like he jumped out that hi-fi. And when he sung "Hold On," I know most you guys and everybody listening probably has heard that song. If you listen to it again, hopefully when you think about me, hold on, hold on, hold on. He sings it. He sings it over and over again, but he wasn't singing it to you and everybody else. He was actually singing it to me. And it was a strange feeling. It was like I had a connection with this guy that I'm never likely to meet. Well, hopefully one day now, but I've sent him many emails anyway. But he sung it to me at that moment in my life where I needed something for somewhere to help me, just to guide me. And him singing "Hold On, Hold On, Hold On." And I remember sitting listening to him singing "Hold On, Hold On, Hold On." And I woke up that next again morning. The pills were scattered over the rug. I hadn't taken any. And I woke up and then help time. Like that was like, there's one thing thinking about committing suicide is another thing prepping like what you've done and getting to yourself in a state when you're ready something's wrong. And that was when I realised to myself something is seriously wrong. So I went back to the doctors. Right, your antidepressants are not working. They make me like a zombie. I'm no there. Heroin's not working, Valium's not working, cannabis is not working. All these drugs are not working. I need off the drugs. That's what I need to be able to stay on this earth, is to get off these drugs because they're destroying me. You know, and I had lengthy conversations with the doctors and went to go and see counsellors. Very quickly, you know, counsellors who had read about addiction in a textbook, no disrespect. My mind never allowed me to engage with them. When they were talking about cold turkey, I just sort of switched off. Then I met Francis. He was 8 years off heroin. And I remember saying to him, "How the hell are you still alive?" He shook my hand. He says, "Paul, I've been where you are now. Trust me, I'm 8 years off." And I was like, wow, this guy, he survived. Like, heroin never killed him. So straight away in my mind, I was like, wait a minute, he planted a seed there. And I've since told him, since I've got better, I met him in a pub one night when I was in the army. And I think, well, we went over and introduced him. I think, you planted a seed that night, Francis. Amazing guy. And that was the first seed that was planted. So then I continued to go and try and better myself and get better. And I was trying everything that you could, acupuncture and all these amazing things, and nothing was working. I attended a course with Sirenians. On the fourth week of that course, we went away to a mansion in Biggar. It was all to do with the mind. Right? Now, I was quite sceptical about this course, but it felt quite nice to get away from my life. So I went away in Biggar, sitting in a classroom environment, big screen comes up. This American psychologist guy called Lou Tice comes on the screen and starts talking about the power of the mind and this and that. And I'm sitting looking at everybody laughing. Like, what are we doing sitting here listening to this guy? He's trying to tell me that it's my choice to be a heroin addict. It's like I've tried 13 times and I've genuinely tried. I'm no bullshit. I've really tried. Justifying it to people. And then it was like, I'm not listening to this. But I did, obviously. I sat. What I believed, I didn't think I was taking it in. So he continued talking about the power of the mind, how the ability to choose and things, and the positive influences in life, and how to acknowledge the negative influences and discard them for your life thoughts as well. And there's all this information overload. So I went back to Edinburgh, thought that I'd taken nothing in, went back to heroin, went back to all the other drugs and everything else. And then was not long after, 17 years ago, when the 14th of May just passed, I woke up and something was different. I'd had heroin the night before, all my drugs were on the table, like they were usually every morning. I woke up, am I allowed to swear, Adam? No.
Of course you can swear, we're late at night. No, let's just say whatever you like.
So I woke up that morning, I was under 8 stone. Doctor had told me malnutrition will kill you before heroin kills you. You're not eating. I had to do a food diary for the doctor. Monster Munch, with a heavily buttered roll was all I was eating. And 40 cups of tea with 3 sugars, 4 sugars to keep my hunger pains at bay. So he told me straight, he said, look, heroin's not going to kill you, malnutrition's going to kill you. You've dropped under 8 stone and I'm seriously concerned for you now. And I was like, well, I didn't care. Can you give me a prescription, please? I want my methadone. Right? I didn't care about anything else. I was taking heroin and methadone at the same time because I was wanting to get out of it, you know? So it was like, something was different that morning. And I had a big mirror above my fireplace. And instantly, for the moment I woke up and knew something different, I couldn't quite work out what was different. And I remember walking to the mirror, and it wasn't Lou Tice's voice, that American sound. It wasn't his voice. It was the words that he had said that I'd somehow stored into my memory. And it was the same thing. Choice. And I was like, wait a minute, right? So if the choice is mine, you know, we'll put this to the test instantly, you know. And I was like, no, I only wanted one thing, Adam, not to be a heroin addict. All I wanted. So I asked myself in my own mind what I want. I said it out loud. I put my nose in the mirror. I looked at my eyes. I remember looking square in my eyes, and I put my nose and says, don't fucking ask for heroin ever again, because you're never getting it. And I would go proper angry when I said it. I got goosebumps the size of golf balls. I only had a pair of boxers on. Goosebumps over my whole body. I was like, no fucking way, I've done it. I can't believe it. Like, I can't tell anybody because I've relapsed so many times, nobody's going to believe me. Instantly, for that moment in the mirror, this is going to sound the craziest thing to a lot of people. For that moment in the mirror, I knew instantly I would never touch heroin again till the day I die. I knew that for a fact. The second thing was that I started to dream about a future that I never believed I had for once. I was starting to think instantly, wait a minute, right, so I'm off heroin now. I've not even went through cold turkey yet. I knew, right? I'm off heroin now, and I'm now going to start, I'm going to get a car again. I'm maybe going to get a girlfriend. Like, I'm going to get my own house. I can get a job. I can get a job back in the supermarket where I used to work in the bakery where I used to work. I can do this. And my mind just started like, boom. This thing about Lou Tice telling me that this choice is mine and mine alone. It's not to mum and dad. It's not to government. It's not to drug counsellors to choose when I'm not a heroin addict any longer. It's up to me up there. And that is what he showed me, this tool. And it wasn't stopping it. That course was nothing to do with addiction. Nothing to do with addiction whatsoever. It was all just to do with the power of the mind, the way the mind works. And I applied it to my heroin addiction, and it blew my mind. And I was like, and this is why I'm on social media. This is why I wrote the book. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. People have to understand that there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, don't just assume because people tell you this is the way to do it and this is the way to do it. It's not necessarily always the case. Trust me, I'm living, walking proof that if you tap in to your mind, the ability that your mind has got to change for a positive influence instantly, if you want it, if you believe it enough, you can change it instantly like what I done. And you can go on and you can do anything in the world that you want, anything.
It sounds like on that day that you had a word with yourself that day, and you held yourself to account and to a higher standard. And whether that was some clever psychology or neuro-linguistic programming or something that Lou Tice had, you know, done, and somehow, you know, despite you dismissing it, you know, fuck, what a lot of shite, you know, you've gone home and it's been planted in there, and you've got up and you've had, because like you said, you'd promised your mum, but you let her down. You promised your brothers, you let them down. You probably promised loads of people, but when you had that word with yourself, it was like, that's it. There was no going back. So
people get in the mirror, like, try it. What have you got to lose?
I have that image. That is a powerful image of you just stand goosebumps and just fucking, you know, literally just telling yourself that that's it. It's over. So tell us then. So, you know, for the book Hero to Heroin to Hero, like what's the journey now that takes you up to the Scots Guards?
So from there, instantly beginning to dream and get better. So I thought, I knew I had to start eating. That was the first. I realised that this weight was going to continue to drop if I didn't get my appetite. Started to eat. Then I started to run. I used to Forrest Gump it everywhere, all over Edinburgh, all along Princes Street, round Arthur's Seat, along the beach, promenade, all the way along, everywhere. Music in my ears, and it felt good. I didn't know back then, but I now know that I'd flipped my addiction from heroin to running. Mm-hmm. Whenever I felt angry or sad or anxious or anything, I put my running trainers on and I just used to go for a run. I'd come back and I'd feel better. So, you know, I started doing that, and then I started getting fitter. Then I went to the gym. I started doing weights. Then muscles started popping out in my body that I never even knew existed. You know, again, it was an addiction. You'd go in and lifting weights, and it was helping me mentally, but physically, and I'm standing looking in the mirror. For my whole life, looking in the mirror and seeing this 8 year, I could see my ribs showing. I looked all gaunt and horrible, and I hated mirrors. And I waited. This gym's full of mirrors, and I remember standing like what's this? Like, I was like, I had big guns, and like I was falling out, and I was like go on yourself, right? So then I started boxing. So I started doing the boxing training, and that was helping my anger management because I had anger issues. So every time I was hitting this, pounding this heavy bag, I was feeling better. Again, it became like an addiction. Every day when I felt like that, on the heavy bag, felt better. And then I got my job back, back working full time. Something was missing. I just felt like this isn't it for me. I didn't feel like this is it for me. There's something missing. And then I'm approaching 30-year-old, and I'm sitting in the staff canteen looking through a paper, and there's an advert for British Army, be the best. And I looked at it and I was like, too old. 27 is the cut-off for the army. So I went away and applied for the fire brigade. There's the yellow pages. The size of the yellow pages of this application, mate, honestly, it was huge, right? I was like, no, danger. Like, I didn't think that. Then I thought about the police force. So I could be in the drug squad or something with my knowledge, right? And this is the sort of the way my mind was allowing me to think. Like, I could put so much good back. Then I thought about half of my friends. Like, I didn't think of people that I know. I was like, nah, maybe no. So it was a couple of days later, I'm walking along Shadwick Place in Edinburgh, Army Recruitment Centre, walking past. Never for the life of me know why I walked in, because I'm too old. I walked in, corporal sitting at the desk. He went, how you doing, pal? I says, he says, just take a seat. So I was like, right. So I've sat down, pipe major of the Scots Guards, sitting in the office. He was in there, a young laddie, wee whippersnapper, 18-year-old or something, right, or suited and booted and that. He's come out, and he's went, I think he shouted my name, right, like Boggie, because our surname was like Boggie. So I went in. Now, I wouldn't have said sir back then, because I didn't, that wasn't the right, that would have been, hiya, or something I would have said to him. He looked at me and went, how old are you? I says, I'm almost 30. He says, are you fit? I says, I run every day, round Arthur's Seat, along the beach, I do weights, and I'm boxing every single day. He says, well, you look at, I'll get you Scots Guards. That was the interview. And I'm like, wait a minute. Scots Guards are toy soldiers. The ones that stand outside Buckingham Palace with the red tunic and stuff, that'll do me. Like, that's an achievement. That's an accomplishment in life. And this guy's telling me that he'll get me Scots Guards, so I'll do it. I can't remember what it was, but I remember being suited and booted that day. I never waited on the bus. I ran home with my suit on. What people must have been thinking, seeing me running with a suit on, I'll never know, right? With they cluppety shoes, right? I remember running all the way back down to Loch End. Excitement, like just sheer excitement. Got back in the house, got the Google, Scots Guards, typed in the Scots Guards and stuff, and watching it. And right enough, they're outside Buckingham Palace, they're outside Windsor Castle and all that. And it's like, wow, like imagine me ending up being one of the guys. And then it clips, and then it's the next thing they're in Afghan, and they're getting shot at, and they're on the front line, and they're fighting the Taliban, and that. I'm like, whoa, fucking wait a minute. Right, well, this is it. Like, I have to decide. If you want to do something in your life, and you've got this opportunity, this is destiny. You're meant to be doing this. So it doesn't matter how many people laugh at you, because they're going to laugh at you. I knew that straight away. As soon as I say to my mum and dad and my brothers and my pals that I'm joining the army at nearly 30-year-old, they're going to laugh, right? So that was a given. But I was like, no, we've been here before, right? Power in the mind, let's do it. So my determined nature, I was like, right. Went away, done a look at life for a week, came back, told my family, right enough, they all laughed. Everyone's all laughing their heads off. Paul's going to join the army. Have you ever had anything like it in your life? And I was like, well, watch me then. Right? I says, I've been at a look at life. I says, I'm going for my medical next week. And there's a how's the medical going to go? You've been a heroin addict. How's that going to go down? That'll be all right. Like instantly, I knew it's like deep down. I was thinking, nah, I've got a point now. So go for the medical at Pennycook, Glen Close, I think it is. Went and go in there. He strips me down to my boxer shorts, Adam. He's got me hopping around like a frog on the flare, this doctor, right? Obviously, by then I was ripped. Physically, like I was ripped, because of the trainer. So he's hopping me around and stuff, and then he's got me jumping up in the bed in a boxers, and he says, have you any problems with drugs or alcohol? Expecting to probably hear no. And I was like, I was a heroin addict for 7 years. Just came out of it. And then my heart sank instantly. So he's sitting there with his notepad. Oh, what's the dates? How long have you been clean? Right, just wait there a minute. 15 minutes left me with my boxer shorts on that bed. Right, he made me out. I'm sitting there and I'm just totally heartbroken. And then he's come back 15 minutes later. Right, says you've been clean long enough and you're in very good physical shape. Enjoy basic training. Handed me a wee ticket. And I was like, I think I ran again. I know I ran home for Pennycook, like, but I would have ran somewhere. I was like, yeah, beauty. Like, I'm starting basic training. Ran back, mum, dad, tell everybody, tell aunties and uncles, tell everybody I'm joining the army. So I got sent down to Cataract, 6 months intense course to be a guardsman, learning how to do all the drill, learning how to strip a rifle, clean a rifle, fire a rifle, attach my bayonet and attack enemy, and all these training courses and stuff. Absolutely amazing. I passed out after 6 months. It was just a crazy time basic training. Like I could do a whole night talking to you just to do that alone, right? But anyway, so yeah, I get back to Cataract. I pass out. I get sent down to do my ceremonial duties down in London. So we get down there. Right, we've got a week or 2 week break. Get sent down to London, and it's like, wow, there's Buckingham Palace over there. And we're looking at it like what tourists do, and it's like you can see the guardsmen standing inside, and it's like that's going to be us. And that, like, I'm not gonna lie, like I was a wee bit crapping myself because it's like, geez, like this is a bit, it's getting real now. Like I didn't think I was going to get this far. I didn't think I was going to pass out for basic training. I was giving it my best go, but I didn't think I was going to get through. And then I say to my pals, like, this is surreal. No, I don't know. Like I'm shitting myself. And it's like, you'll be fine. You've been taught what to do. So I went out and got my posting. Got my posting on the very first time. Very first time was Windsor Castle. I made a bit of balls up here. I didn't even telling you. Right, I know I could talk for Scotland. I'm sure you and everybody listening can agree. Right, but I need to tell you this story as quickly as I can. Posting, Windsor Castle. You get so many paces to the left, so many paces to the right as a guardsman. So you can loosen off your arms. Right? So you come to attention, stamp your foot in, and you march. 1, 2, count 1, 3, 7. Turn, come back. And I think it's 7 one side and 11 one side on the other side. So you have to remember these numbers. So, Windsor Castle, my very first posting. Super hot summer's day. Right at the back. The sun was July. Sun was coming right down me in London. My boots, freshly bulled, looking in good order. Sergeant and the captain marched me out. Right, you going to be all right, Boggie? Aye, sir, I'll be fine. So I'm thinking. They brought me to attention. I pulled my rifle down by my side. They've walked away on the cobbles. I could hear them marching away in the cobbles. Right? Oh, fuck. I forgot how many paces. Right now, no, for fuck's sake. Right, so I'm standing there shouting myself because I'm now a guardsman. Like, literally, everything's all just been leading up to this point where I'm standing on this post being an actual guardsman. And I was already shouting myself, and that's probably why I forgot what the number of paces were. But they told me that the Queen comes out with bottles of lemonade and glasses of lemonade with the corgis. And she sometimes comes over and talks to the guardsman. If she does that, obviously, drink the lemonade. So I was like, right. So I remember standing there and I was thinking, I didn't know how many paces to go. What happens if I move in a day too many paces or something and the Queen is watching, or somebody else in that environment, the police officers or whatever, or some officer clocks me doing something wrong? So I decided, Adam, right? I think it must have been about 5 o'clock at night. So the heat was still there in the sun. I decided, I had this brainwave. What I'm going to do for my very first post on Windsor Castle is I'm going to stand still and I'm not going to move for 2 hours. Right? You get posted on for 2 hours. So I'm standing there with my rifle in the thing they sit on. I do not know in a mind space where I went that day for those 2 hours. And I know it wasn't nice. I remember my arms going numb. I remember still having to be aware that I'm holding my rifle. Imagine the Queen seeing me dropping my rifle, because and I was like crapping myself. I stood there for 2 hours and the sweat. With my bearskin and shaking it. He says, Boggie. I ignored them, eh? I must have been in another zone. He went, Guardsman, Boggie, what do you do when an officer's approaching? I went, oh, sorry, Sergeant. He says, you always say, sir, if there's an officer. And I'm like, salute. He says, right then, my arms and stuff I still only got the ring with, right? So I made an ass of that a wee bit anyway. They went, right, you're going to be off in 10 minutes. I thought that was him coming to get me. So I had to stand there for another 10 minutes. And I was just like, word got back into Windsor Castle. They were all waiting, laughing at me when I came in. Because obviously I told them what had happened. So I never made the mistake ever again for all the guards that I'd done to ever forget how many paces to the left and how many paces to the right, because you need it to sort of keep the blood flowing. So I'd done all the ceremonial duties for 9 months. Absolutely loved it. It was an absolute honour and privilege to be a guardsman, and then got sent back to Catterick to start my pre-deployment training for Afghan, for my first tour of Afghan. Shit myself. My pals noticed that I was scared. I admitted I was scared. They came up and visited me in my room one night for 2 nights, back to back, and they're talking to me and they're saying, Boggie, like training, like you've been taught it all, we're going to be there with you. Like when you get shot, I'm going to pick you up, so don't be daft. They were joking and laughing about it, and I was like, Kim, what? Like they broke me round. So then I got over the fear, then I started getting excitement. Going into Edinburgh every weekend, see my mum and dad, see my pals, go out in the piss and all the rest of it. Proud as punch, you know, looking good. Now I'm a soldier, back in the places, seeing all my old pals still on heroin and stuff, walking past them and then looking at me and thinking, "You're in the army now, Boggie?" Like, aye. Kind of like just bits of pride there, like I've done good for myself. So I remember thinking, and you know, my car had broken down, so I was getting a friend to pick me up in Hoyt, and I think that's down in the borders, somewhere down in the borders. So I got a bus to Edinburgh down to the borders, jumped in his car. 2 months prior to basic training, driving past the Otterburn, and we hit black ice. Car went into a skid, 70 mile an hour, crashed the car. I broke my back and crushed my spine. And they two guys walked away. Driver had a bruised pinky nail, and my Fijian army pal, who wasn't wearing his seatbelt, had a bruised head. He crushed my spine, I later found out, because the impact, there was a big massive boulder at the side of the road, Adam. Big massive boulder. And as I remember bracing up in the car seat, thinking, fuck, that's gone right for me. So it's belted at 70 mile an hour. And I remember my back, something in my back went. So it went up. And then we went down a verge into a field, but it was going on for ages into long grass. So the car's going all the way down. Because he never had his seatbelt on, the spinal specialist said that the boulder broke my back, but the impact of him thrown into the back of my chair when the car came to its final halt was what crushed my spine. So they got up and walked away. I'm sitting in the front of the car. I watch American movies, right? So I see all this fucking smoke coming from the engine bay. It was steam, more than likely. But I see smoke, thinking, fuck, the car's going to blow up. So we're in this long grass, opened the door. I remember putting one foot out, putting my hand up, went to pick myself up, and I collapsed with the pain in my back. I'm not far enough away from the car yet. So I start pulling bunches of reeds of grass. And I started pulling myself, grating like a little sissy. I didn't mind admitting that, right? I was like, So pulling, like moaning and moaning and moaning. I felt I was going to pass out of layback. They were dazed. They were just walking around dazed. One of them was on the phone. And I remember lying there. There was snow on the field, like where we were. There was snow. And I had this brainwave because of this pain in my back. It wouldn't go away. I couldn't move it. It just wasn't going away. I'll pull up my army jacket and I'll put my back into the snow and that'll numb all the pain. What a great idea that was. Right? So I pulled my army jacket up and I went into the snow like that. Did absolutely nothing for the pain whatsoever. All that started happening was hypothermia was starting to set in and I started shaking. And my hands were shaking, my head was shaking. I'm lying in the snow. Army people were driving past. I later found out they drove, "Oh, we seen the car in the field. Was that you, Boggie?" I was like, "Aye." And they say, "Stop." Oh, wankers. Anyway, so this Filipino woman stopped and she came over with a jacket and she put her jacket over me and she held my hand. My face was all smashed, so I couldn't really see her. But she held my hand. She said, "What's your name? You're going to be okay. The ambulance is coming." Well, and you know, and I got taken to Newcastle, Queen Victoria, I think it is. I got taken to the hospital. And that was when I found out that I broke my back, crushed my spine. I'm still want to go to Afghanistan. Like I'm not hearing it. I've healed things before. Like I'm not having any of that. I'm going to Afghan, and I had that sort of mindset. I'm going. I'll get better. Give me a couple of weeks, and I'll be over this. So remember sitting right in the hospital bed, right, and I'd only been in the hospital for a day and a half or 2 days. I had my own morphine in that. Sitting in the bed, right, Mr. Boggie, we're going to take you to theatre. And this was the 5th of December, so it would have been about the 7th of December when that happened. And I kicked off at all these nurses, these 4 nurses down at the bottom of my bed, getting to take me to theatre. I said, "Look at the board." I said, "I've just broke my back 2 days ago, and you want me to go to a pantomime?" And I was like going mental at them. And they're like, because it was Christmas time, that's what I thought, but they were like theatre. So I'm not fucking going to theatre. So I said, no, Mr. Bogie, surgery. And I went, whoa. Like, you're not cutting me open. I says, like, is that my only option? And it was like, no, well, you need to wait till Monday morning to see the specialist. He came, I opted not to get surgery. He says, you lie in that bed for 4 weeks and do not move because your back is unstable. He says, if I have surgery on you, I'll have you up on your feet in 2 days. And I was like, no, my dad had surgery when I was younger and he never recovered for his back surgery. I says, so thank you. I'll do the 4 weeks. No worries. Worst 4 weeks in my life. Like, horrendous 4 weeks. I'm not going to that because again, that's another one. But worst 4 weeks. But then I went back to the army. I'd done all the intense rehabilitation courses and I've done everything that I could to try and get myself to Afghan. I needed it, Adam. For all this that I'd been through in my life and all this training that I'd done, that was intense, I needed to go over there and just prove a point to myself and to everybody that I'm better and I've changed. You know, and I had this desire, like I just needed to do it, and then that car crash took it away, and it wasn't my fault. So I started wallowing in my self-pity again. The doctors put me on heavy drugs, fully concerned, as was I. I used to be a heroin addict. I've got an addictive personality. You're going to put me on codeine and tramadol and gabapentin, and pregabalin, amitriptyline, and all these drugs. You're going to put me on them because there is no alternatives. And I'm going to have to go on them because there are no alternatives. So that's what they told me. You're going to be on these drugs for the rest of your life, Paul, and you have to accept it. It's the best chance you've got to moving on. So I accepted it, took the prescription, ended up heavily addicted to all my drugs. Started abusing my drugs to get a hit. If you take enough codeine, you get an almost heroin hit like, you know, that's the same. It's the same. You take enough of them, you can almost feel like you've had heroin. So I started abusing my drugs, started smoking cannabis again, which is something I never wanted to do again in my life. You know, justifying it. Every day I've got a crushed spine. I've had horrible things happen and I nearly died. So I'm justifying it to myself. It's all right to take 8 tramadol in one go because of the pain. The pain's very real. Pain's very real right now. I'm in a lot of pain, physical pain right now. And I'm over a year of all my drugs. That's why I get that in. Over a year of all drugs, completely drug-free, with the same injuries that I've always had. So I became depressed and I withdrew from society again. I got married and things, but I wasn't socialising with my friends because the drugs were causing... they were starting to take effect physically, where I was starting to look like a drug user again. And folk were saying, you're imagining it. And I was like, I'm the one looking in the mirror every morning. I see the black circles. I see my face going all gaunt, all pale looking. I can see the muscles stripping off my bones. Like, I think I'm not imagining it. And everybody else can see it. So I'm not going to the wedding. And I'm not going to the birthday party. I'm not going to the funeral. Because I don't want people judging me and thinking I'm back on heroin. So I shut myself away, just me and my wife. You know, and I had a breakdown last year. Had a mental breakdown. A few things caused it, which I'll not go into, but I had a breakdown anyway when just things got on top of me and my head was just mince. And then my wife walked in one day and says, we're going into national lockdown. We're like, for at least 2 weeks. I was like, we'll be about 2 weeks. That's what I thought the lockdown was going to last. So what did I do for 2 weeks? All the way through my recovery, Adam, I'd been advised by one of the counsellors, maybe Francis, that we spoke about earlier. Write down how you feel. No for anybody else, for you. Write it down and get it out there and get it off. So I started writing all those years ago, and I started to accrue quite a lot of paper. And then in the army, when I was telling my stories to all the army guys about my life in Edinburgh and heroin, they're like, "Boggie man, write a book, make a film. Yeah, mate, honestly, this is what you should do, man. You need to write a book about all this." And I was like, "Well, maybe I will." And I'll go to Afghan and I'll come back and I'll call it Heroin to Hero. So that was it. It was all decided. Right, come back to Afghanistan, publish a book. So, obviously, because of my injuries and stuff, the book nearly never got finished, and it certainly wasn't going to have the title that it's got because I didn't feel like a hero. I felt in him, but it was taken away through no fault of my own. But that's how I felt personally. So I remember sitting for 3 days and 3 nights, notepad and pen and all that, or writing this book, just constantly writing. While I was writing about breaking my heroin addiction in the book. Again, you kidding me on? It's not happening again. And I was like, it is. And I remember sitting there, it was only a year ago, just over a year ago. I remember sitting there and writing this book, and I'm sitting writing about the power of the mind and this ability to change, looking in the mirror, don't fucking ask for any heroin. I remember writing it and getting goosebumps on my legs. And I was like sitting listening to Tom Walker on Spotify. I'd never really heard them before. That was the very first night I'd listened to him, Tom Walker. Leave a Light On, the song Leave a Light On. So I remember sitting and re-educating myself as I'm writing, thinking, wait a minute, it is true. What do you want now? Boom, straight away. I didn't want to be a drug addict. I was more clear this time. Last time it was just heroin, right? Just heroin was just the drug that I hated, and I didn't want to be a heroin addict. This time round, I just didn't want to be a drug addict, full stop. That's what my dream was. I never thought I'd be able to achieve. So I spent the next probably 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and I tapered myself off the sensible way this time, cutting down. And then it was amazing, I come off all these tablets, and my wife comes in and I says to her, babe, I'm off all my tablets. She says, how's your back? And I was like, what? She says, babe, that's amazing. I said, you tell me it's amazing. I said, my back isn't any worse than what it was when I was on all these prescription tablets. I was filled with anger. Initially, I done because the doctors had told me I had to be on these, and I accepted that. Then I continued writing the book, listening to Tom Walker, Leave a Light On, made me think about the homeless people. I was never properly homeless. I slept in stairs and slept in cars and sofa hopped and stuff like that. There's no homeless like what these people have to suffer. And I remember sitting listening to Leave a Light On. Boom, right. All the money for this book's got to homelessness in Scotland. That's decided instantly as that. And it was all thanks to that song. I've tried to tell Tom that, but as things are right now, he's not what to hear it from me. Right? But maybe in time, same with Michael Stipe, right? You have to have faith in these things. But so I decided to give the money away. And I was like, right, what else? No, you can do more than this. What about this thing you've just done? That's important, what I've done with the heroin and what I've just done with my mind there to allow me to break off of this prescription addiction that I've got, and this cannabis addiction that I've got right now. That, when I accomplished that, that's when I felt like, wait a minute, I've got some tools here that I can really help people in this world, not just Scotland. I've got a message here for everybody across the world that's suffering with any sort of addiction, that change is possible and we can recover and we can do that. So that's why I decided to sort of open myself up. I've done 26 podcasts across the world, India, East Coast to West Coast of America, the Bronx, San Francisco, LA, New York, Florida. Done them everywhere, all across the UK. Telling my story similar to what I am using now, just sharing everything and openly and honestly as I can, in the hope that people that are listening open their ears, open their mind, and think, you know what, I'm struggling right now, and that lad has inspired me, because I now believe that I can maybe go on and, no, maybe, I can go on and I can better my life. And I'm going to get off these drugs. And I'm not going to listen to the doctors. I'm not going to listen to people pulling me down and being negative with me and calling me names. I'm doing it. I'm going to have that same mindset as what Paul had, and Paul has, sorry, because I've still got it. And I'm going to go and get it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's...
Tell us a bit about, I mean, listen, we're, you know, that's kind of, we're getting up to 100 minutes. But, and it's, I mean, look, we could go on all night. And so that's why I said before we actually started this, that I'd like to get you on again, and we will, because you've got films and all kinds of stuff that you're busy making and projects. And the book is just going to keep, you know, growing. And so, like, let's finish by just talking a wee bit about this book. You know, how long it took you to write, what it means to you, where it's available, where people can buy it. So let's have a wee bit on the book.
So the book, you can buy it on Amazon, both ebook and paperback. $9.99 for the ebook and $12.99 for the paperback. All the profits go to homelessness in Scotland. It took me 16 years to write it. About 16 years. I had been writing it through all my recovery. There is a little bit right at the back that I believe... There is a sentence that I want to leave you with before I go, right? Because I'm conscious of time. Sorry, Adam. I'm motor.
No, and I love it, and that's why this is we can call this part 1 of the Paul BOGGIE, you know, Heroin to Hero podcast, and we'll come back and do part 2 another time.
Brilliant. Like, sorry everyone, right? Adam. So there's a sentence on this book that always catches me a little bit. Right now I'm going to cry because I felt happy writing goodbye and it wasn't a suicide note. And that's right at the back of the book when I'm saying goodbye to everybody that's read the book. I say goodbye. And it's just like, when I think, like, just when I think how close I actually did come to that horrible thing that I would have put my family through. You know, and that's, just never give up. Anybody struggling and listening to this, just never give up, ever. You know, things can seem like you're unbearable at times. Just never give up, because you just never know. And trust me, it is all in the mind. The mind doesn't just control the body. The mind controls absolutely everything. And you hold the power to change that. Everybody does. So sorry, Adam.
No, and I think you've demonstrated that so powerfully. You know, like, we've got a live stream coming up on the 12th of July, and the theme of that one is suicide, suicide awareness, and I'll be leading that. And I've had my own brush with suicide, and I never thought I would. You know, I never thought that I would ever find myself in that position. And like you talked about earlier, you know, the only time suicide presents itself is when you're looking for a solution. You know, it's the answer to a problem. And, you know, it's what you've demonstrated is that by pushing through that and by realizing the power of the mind, and being aware of all the people in your life that you would have been leaving behind, you know, you were able to just, it's like talking to yourself. We do that all the time. You did it directly, you know, and vocally by confronting yourself in the mirror. But even as we're driving around, I can be driving in the car for 5 hours. I'm from Thurso up the North Coast. I can do a 5-6 hour journey, and I'm talking to myself the whole way, all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that conversation cannot be quietened, but it can be it can be managed. And that self-talk, the communication we have with ourselves is one of the most powerful communications we'll ever have, because it was the communication with yourself that took you from the darkest of dark places to the bright place that you now occupy, which is, you know, making a difference, not just to your own life and your family. You've got 2 kids. Is it 2 kids now? Or?
So I've got a daughter and a stepdaughter.
Daughter and step. So you've got 2 children in your life. You know, you've written a book. You've got a film that you're working on. You know, you are making such a difference by by sharing your story. So I just want to say like massive thank you and full of respect for the honesty, the brutal honesty that you impart your story with, because that is definitely something we need more of. You know, everybody, but men in particular, to be able to speak honestly, openly, and be vulnerable and talk about these soft underbelly issues that can, for a lot of people, take them not just to a dark place, but to a place they don't return from.
Yeah.
So listen, you know, we will do another part definitely, because there's too much for us to talk about. I feel like tonight was just part one. We just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
So listen, I usually have some daft questions to just kind of cheer us up at the end of it. Is there somebody? This is probably a good one. I don't like even guests who have shared as much as you. I don't like them leaving without having answered this question. Is there a person, or is there somebody in your life that's made such a huge difference, such an impact? A teacher, family member, boss, mentor, someone you just like to thank?
My wife, she's up the stairs right now, and she makes way for all these interviews and podcasts and stuff. She takes the dog and she goes upstairs. She gives me the space, but she is my #1 supporter, and she has seen a side of me that not many other people will ever see. And she understands more than most what a struggle it has been at times for me. It's not been publicised because it's only been me and her. We've been in lockdown. So it has just been me and her through this whole journey in lockdown. And she's definitely my biggest supporter by a country mile. And I love it a bit. So my wife.
That is a great point to end on. So listen, the riddle that I said at the start, we've had questions from people, and I would love to have more time to be able to answer them all, but I think you have been so thoroughly and fully, comprehensively honest with your story tonight that I think we'll have another one where we answer all the questions that have come through. So my riddle at the beginning, for those of you who watched: what comes once in a minute, twice in a moment, but never in 1,000 years? You got any idea, Paul?
I had no idea when you were saying it, and I've still not got any idea.
What comes once in a minute? This came to me. Is this the one that came to me when I was brushing my teeth? I can't remember, but or when I was driving. That's the lovely thing about creativity, is that it comes when you're not forcing it. Like a watched kettle never boils. Creativity never comes when you're trying to force it. But what comes once in a minute, twice?
Makes sense now.
I love watching that light bulb. What? I see. I love that moment. Well, listen, for those of you who have tuned in tonight, thank you so much. Keep following at StreetCones on Twitter, or we're on Facebook at StreetCones. We've got another live stream coming up on the 12th of July. As I mentioned, we'll be talking about suicide and looking at a short film made from the Road to Change workshops that we'll be running, and the script that we worked on with a bunch of guys and girls that were involved in the 12-week workshop for Glasgow, the community payback workshop. So we started with a blank page and we wrote a story in which the main theme is suicide. So we've got a really good live stream coming up on the 12th of July, so register for that and stay in tune with us. And we will be back again with Paul at a later date. We'll stay in touch and we'll book another one in. But meanwhile, Paul, just thanks so much. Please support Paul by buying his book and sharing it. Heroin to Hero, it's available on Amazon. All the profits go to homelessness in Scotland, so it's a great book, as it's a great gift for yourself, but also for other people. And I would have been a great Father's Day gift for a lot of people, but buy a copy anyway. Birthday presents, Christmas, you name it. Paul, thank you so much. Everybody who's watching, thank you. Stay tuned to at StreetCones, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Adam.
All the best.